Is Russia doubling down on an ineffective strategy? And are they solving that problem by just silencing people who call them out on it? In fact, I might even end up being banned in Russia. Guys, I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It is November 22nd, 2022. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, so when we look at the tactical map, you can see the largest attacks have happened in two main clusters. Looks like that we see first near north of Blahodatne and around Avdiivka. You can see that I really think there is an effort by Russia to create some sort of encirclement around Avdiivka. Of course, they need to actually flip some territory to make this happen, and they're burning a lot of men and material to do it. The other problem, of course, with Avdiivka is that it actually has a number of exfil routes that will be tough for Russia to control. One is due west here at Orlivka. You can see here, you can also see this main thoroughfare along the rail line. Unless Russia can get a hold of this, it's going to have a tough time of things, right? You can also see there's a number of other roads that allow Ukrainian forces to get resupplies into defending forces around the city. Then, of course, but you can see they're trying to attack from multiple directions. And you know, I've talked about the failure of mass, the failure of concentration of forces for Russia. I think, honestly, a big part of it is that these forces cannot be concentrated more because Ukrainian artillery and Ukrainian drones will spot them. You can't assemble into large groups because they will get... Those formations will be, we'll say, forcibly dispersed by Ukrainian artillery. The issue then is, how do you conduct attacks doing that? Now, there's ways to do it. A good military with a high level of command and control can disperse its forces and have them come together as the attack happens. But this is really hard to do, right? In this case, for example, you would actually have these two forces attack maybe from the west. Well, they've kind of maybe done it here. They had one attack from the west, one attack from the north, and they hopefully are able to put a lot of pressure on what looks like a very small suburb. This is how you would actually solve this problem. The only issue is that, right, where for every time it happens, there's times when it doesn't. Interestingly, I just want to point out, Optine, Russia has claimed full control of Optine. So it seems weird that they're still fighting. Don't know why there's fighting in a village you claim to control, but, you know, who am I to judge the Russian information space? Oh, right. Yep, you can see also, of course, a series of attacks taking place, Marinka, and to the south here. But I think to the extent there's any strategy at work, and you can see, right, Wagner Group launching one attack at Bakhmut, and then you have these three attacks across three villages, not really part of any sort of coordinated effort. But what I think we're definitely seeing, I'm pretty confident we can say that Russia or the DNR, LNR, whoever is in charge of this operation, is trying to effect an encirclement. They just need to be a little better with how they deploy their troops. And then, of course, the Wagner Group probably here still sort of putzing around in Bakhmut. And whoever is running this fight between Bakhmut and Bilohorivka, I don't know if anyone is, honestly. This looks like three commanders, three villages, each doing their own thing. But let's talk about what Russia is doing about this terrible strategy. Well, the answer is, instead of actually fixing their core problems, they are just going to silence their critics. There is a bill working its way through the Duma, the Russian House, that would regulate social media networks, online cinemas, search engines, and internet marketplaces. That would require the owners of all sites and platforms to ensure the government's ability to fully or partially block the participation of specific users. and that these provisions appeared, of course, before the beginning of the war to specifically target Western outlets like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube due to the risk of social conflict. This is actually the exact same justification used by, well, actually, as I think about it, kind of every government, certainly in China, and certainly even many in the United States that want to see these platforms regulated, believe the algorithm's ability to show people news that the government doesn't like is at risk of creating social conflict. Of course, right? They think the Russian mill bloggers are lauding it because they think this recommender algorithm is going to make it harder for nations to spread propaganda. One of the common conspiracy theories is that all Western outlets operate like Russian outlets, where they are beholden to and backed by the state, when in fact, a lot of times these platforms are not actually pushing a pro-state agenda or are governed by the state. You can see that for a long time, several years ago, right? You had trying to think of the way to put this nicely. Basically, the U.S. had the Republican Party in power, and Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube spared no expense to skew against those search results for some of the more right-wing, especially their favorite pet causes around, identity politicking and stuff. But so it's fairly clear. You also see it with COVID misinformation. Again, these platforms worked really hard to quash COVID misinformation, or rather, they didn't work as hard as they could. It was still able to pervade across these platforms, despite the government's absolute insistence that they stop. So the idea, but in Russia, people just believe that these are all arms of like the CIA or Western propaganda or something. But what's also interesting is that the FSB has also created a decree that created a list of military technical activities, which, if received by foreign sources, can be used against the Russian Federation, making them illegal. This includes information on the assessment and forecast of the development of military, political, and strategic and operational situation, and information about the observance of rule of law and moral and psychological climate of Russian troops. Guys, if you've been on this channel for any length of time, you know that's basically all we talk about at this point, given that it's a constant thorn in Russia's side. And this would ban a wide range of information covered by Russian mill bloggers, who obviously discuss these things and are often critical of the Ministry of Defense. It makes it really look like Russia is doing it using some ham-handed tactics to try to crack down on Russian mill bloggers and informal information networks, but they're very late to the party, and it's not even clear that Russia will still have the ability to meaningfully enforce it across hundreds of mill bloggers, even if they could figure out who they are. Anyway, guys, that is your update for today. Wanted to do a shout out, of course, to the patrons of Patreon. Thank you so much to my Lieutenant tier patrons. You know that if you guys want to see the viral combat videos that YouTube won't let me show you, I do all those breakdowns on the Patreon. I'm trying to drop a new Patreon video about every week. Anyway, guys, I'll see you all in the next one.